name is Zainab Ruhwanya. I'm from the University of Cape Town, and I'll be presenting this paper, Critical Analysis of Information Security Culture Definition, that we wrote with Dr. Jacques Ophoff, and he's my supervisor. He's also from University of Cape Town, and from university. He also works from University of Abertay, University Dundee, United Kingdom. So thank you so much for this opportunity to present today, although it's virtually. I'm really happy to be in HAISA 2020, and I can write in history that I was in a virtual HAISA 2020 presentation during the pandemic. So this is great. So where's my mouse? There you go. So I'll be talking. My agenda today is I'll talk about introduction, there'll be methodology, and the classification of the information security culture, critical engagement, conclusion, and I'll invite question and answers. So as we understand information security culture, when we're talking of information security culture, the concern is no longer on the technical aspect of information security, but we look at the balance between processes and technology with the actors such as individuals, groups, and organization. And we know that it's very well established that cultivation of information security culture in any social context which involve individual groups and organization influences the behavior and also can result in significant effects on the protection of information and resources. So this importance of information security culture has resulted in numerous studies which are centered in the security and its relationship in information security behavior, privacy, information security management. There's security education, training, and awareness. But the biggest challenge is that although there's an increasing number of information security culture research, there's lack of common understanding, and then there's lack of theoretical clarity and conceptualization of information security culture. And this can be seen because information security culture inherit from information system, information security, and also from culture as a general. And we understand that the term information security culture by itself is complex. Information system is complex. And 2 days ago, on Wednesday, when even when the keynote speaker was talking about, he presented about cybersecurity and its complexity on how to define it. And when we're talking about information security culture, since we are looking at so many angles which involve culture, information system, and security, so with culture, we'll be looking at things such as values, symbol, knowledge, behavior, attitudes, beliefs, perception, underlying assumptions. And also the conceptualization goes further to conceptualize information security culture as sometimes subculture of organizational culture, or sometimes as influenced by the national cultures. So the objective of today's talk or this paper was to advance the understanding of information security culture by critically reflecting on how information security culture is defined in the information security literature. We were not trying to provide any taxonomy, but we wanted to review and compare different views of the term information security culture by using a cultural classification by Straub et al. They presented theoretical classifications of culture in their studies. So we also wanted to understand how other definitions of information security cultures contributing to the understanding of the information security culture itself. And why we thought this is important, because what information security culture is and what it entails, it has essential consequences for recognizing first information security culture as a contributing domain of knowledge to information security and information systems. And also it has a potential of establishing a common ground for understanding and researching information security culture in the organization in different contexts, which can include having a shared understanding will make it easy for researchers to compare and build upon each other's work. And And this came about when we saw that different studies that were reviewed, they actually had, you would be looking at the same definition sometimes, but they all are talking about different aspects of information security culture. We'll see that as we go further. So to achieve our goals, so we did a review of information security culture by using hermeneutic literature review process by Boyle and Kitmanovic. And the hermeneutic philosophy, it offered a method for this literature review that supports the interpretation of literature and also development of understanding through ongoing cyclical dialogue between us, the readers, and also the text. And we thought it was appropriate for the understanding of the phenomena of interest while we were emphasizing on the critical engagement. So our inquiry was accomplished by reviewing information security and cultural literature related to the field of information systems. And so during the search and acquisition process, because as you can see in this hermeneutic framework, there's a search and acquisition process, which it's like a research on its own, and then the analysis and interpretation. That's where you can start mapping and classifying all the concept that you found and critical engage. And this is what this paper will be doing right now. So during the search and acquisition, we did a search that included search that requested for all entitled information security culture, because just a regular search of information security produced a large number of results, over 2,510 results. So to narrow down our search, we said, okay, so we want to look at only the result that will come with the title information security and see what they have. So we went through Google Scholar and also Scopus. So with Google Scholar, we found like 212 papers, and in Scopus, we found 154 papers. So during the process, because we were following hermeneutic framework, at first we retrieved just a small number out of this 212, and then we started the review, and we ended up with around 90 articles that we were reviewing. So, and the sorting and selection, what we did, we look at the publication with definitions of information security culture, which said information security culture is, or information security culture is defined as. So, and also because we understood that information security culture comes from a very complex field, which included culture, information system, and information security. So we took some of the paper that had some indirect implied understanding of information security culture. But within that, the definition that we paid attention were those that are coming from information security and information systems field. And the review paid much attention on peer-reviewed journals and conference proceeding articles. So during refining, because many of the definitions that were found come from all the papers. So during refining or citation tracking or using backward or forward lookup, we came up with like 16 definitions. We found like a lot of paper were using maybe a single definition from one researcher, or they will be using one definition that is very common from other papers. So we came up with like 16 definitions. So when we saw that during the classification of information security culture definitions, we saw that all the definitions were based on culture as a whole, as we say that the field of information security culture is based on culture. So, and we look at definitions of culture as itself to better understand all the theoretical background of all the definition that we retrieved those 16 definitions. So one very prominent definition that we took to understand that looked like it had value in all the definition that we saw was a definition from Krober and Kluckhohn, and they defined culture as a product or is historical, which included idea, patterns, and values, is selective, is land, is based upon symbol, and is abstraction from behavior and the product of behavior. In this definition of culture itself, we saw that as it viewed culture as behavior, which shows that culture influence and shape the behavior of individuals according to what is expected from them. So their behavior was either punishable or there are consequences with their behavior according to this definition. So while looking further to the definition of culture and the theory that were used, we found that many definitions followed the national level culture by Hofstede, and other followed organizational level culture, such as Shane, there's Hofstede, there's Cotter and Hesketh, there's Data, and Quinn and Spritzer. And in this study, they use these definitions in studying like information security as in general sense, such as management, there's behavior, there's privacy concern, data protection, and cross-cultural comparison. So to categorize and classify this definition, and because this definition followed back on the culture, and the culture was the main basis, we looked at classifications of definition of culture, and they classified definition of culture based on shared value view. This view is like it identify and describe culture as a set of value patterns shared across individual and within groups. And because a number of scholars focus on this shared value, the value for them refer to the relationship among the abstract categories that were characterized by strong effective components and implying a preference for a certain type of action of individual. And then they had a problem-solving view of culture, which was based on the outcome of culture and what it can accomplish. So this problem-solving view of culture, it was based by Shane, and also believed that culture involves learning within a group, and as the group solves problem of survival and an external environment and its problem of internal integration, which like with the external environment, you see things like policies, strategies, etc. And the internal integration, you see things like behavior, the values they are there. So, and then they had definitions such as general all-encompassing definition, which is like an abstract view which deals with matter that are close to the mind of the individual culture bearer. So what we did, we extended these classifications of the definitions of culture and came up with 4 definitions of information security, which were based on shared value view. And then there's action-based view, which we'll explain in the next slide. And then there's mental model view that's according to the definition that we saw. And then there's problem-solving view. So with the shared value view, this definition focuses on the importance of set of cultural values as a basis for information security culture in the organization. And by saying a set of cultural values, these are values that comes from like organizational culture or national culture. And then some definition would highlight definitions, the set of security value patterns, such as values and belief of information security shared by all members at all levels of security. This would be one definition of information security culture. And the theory they used was theories such as Hofstede organization and national cultural value, or the competing value framework of Quinn and Spritzer. But so when we went further looking at the studies that have worked with this definition, we saw that, like, for example, for national level value view, you'd see there's a lot of study looked at focus on the Hofstede rather than any other national level value views studies such as Hall or others. So we would be looking at in eternity, long and how security culture. And then for organizational value view, they would look at custody. There's like process-oriented versus result-oriented, employee-oriented versus job-oriented, etc. And then there was competing value frameworks such as flexibility, orientation, or control, or flexibility-oriented values or control-oriented values, and how are these influencing information security or information security management. And then there were other studies that looked at people-oriented by using people-oriented solidarity, sociability, task-oriented flat structure by using Lab 9K with a list of organizational values. But we didn't see what were the common security values. So you'd see some study would have accountability, communication, compliance, and governance, but they are not set as shared values, shared security values, but they are like characteristics or what is expected for maybe in the study for the individual to do, how accountable they are, how are they complying to the policies or the governance, etc. But there were no category that shows what are the common security values. And then other studies, we saw that, or the other category or other view that we saw were action-based view, and this view emphasized in the behavior and activities in the organization, how these actions contribute to the information security of the organization. And definition have terms such as behaviors, activities, where things are done in the organization. So the assumption, for instance, one definition would be the assumption about which type of information security behavior is accepted and encouraged in order to incorporate information security characteristics as the way in which things are done in the organization. The theory that was based on action-based view were Shane, where culture emphasized on learning techniques, and common assumptions were based on changing of security behaviors of employee to comply with organization security policy and rules. And you'd find studies that are based on security awareness, training, and education, and how are these programs influencing information security culture. Another of another category of mental model view. So these are mental models about information security, and the definition were an example with here, the way our minds are programmed that will create different pattern of thinking, feeling, and action for providing the security process. And the emphasis on this part were on the human or individual thinking about information security as itself, and what actions would rely on the individual's interpretation and meaning creation that makes information security culture, and how information security culture could work. And most of this, most of the mental model view, you'd see that the study were a mix of looking at the shared value view, but also with a mental model view perspective. So thinking of how, for example, how people conceptualizing risks. That would be one of the questions research will be asking in the mental model view studies. And then another classification was in problem-solving view. This is similar to what we've seen on Stripe. So the view looks at what information security culture as a solution can accomplish in the organization. And this is a combination. The problem-solving view. It's as what we've seen. It's large as a combination of what action-based view and shared value view all together. And when you see the definition, you'll see what I am talking about. So in this specific, you'd see the definition will be talking about specific organizational values and required action for solving problem, which would deal with the external adaptation and internal integration in the organization. And the definition would be something similar like a patterned way of security-based thinking shared within an organization based on values, assumptions and beliefs, which influence the behavior and action of the individual, so that information security becomes a natural aspect in the daily activities in the organization. So, and then this ISC, information security culture, is developed, learned, and changes with time to protect information assets and preserve confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information system resources to meet the co-organization vision. So the problem-solving view covers mostly all the three other views of security. You'd see that there's issues of action-based view, and also if you look further, you can see that it can be a horizontal model view. Cope with the organizational problems, which also involve external adaptation and the internal integration for business continuity. So to engage, to critically analyze these definitions, we use HAISA's framework to assess definitions based on criteria for judging the merits of conceptual model. And we look at how the simplicity of definitions. So the definition, so this look at definition under the information security culture view, where simple being equal. We look at the clarity. This means that the definition under the information security culture view contains concepts that are clear and explicit. And we look at the scope. If the definition covers the scope of the area of interest and do not overlook essential phenomena and issues. And then we look at how the definition helps in organizing concepts, relationship, and information related to whatever is being defined. And then we also look at explanatory power, how the definition helps in describing and explaining the phenomena and predicting outcomes. We also look at reliability, which like how the definition led to relative similar observations and understanding when applied to the same situation by different observers. And then we look at the fruitfulness, which led to, which talked about how definition can lead to essential questions for research and practice and help in answering those questions. So, here we were asking, how is each view contribute to the understanding of information security culture by looking now at the criteria for judging information security, based on the previous criteria that you've seen. So by simplicity, we see that the shared value view of information security culture, it encourages research that contribute to the understanding of the role of organizational national value on influencing information security culture in the organization. So we see that the shared value view could be simple if we look at it in a way of like just national values or organizational value, but it lacks clarity on the values that can be used in assessing or understanding information security culture. So which value can we use in the plethora of values that we have seen? What are the common information security values that can be used when one wants to assess information security culture within a place? And also, if also we look at, if we recall what the keynote speaker on Tuesday, when he was talking about trust and the values between individual and organization, and also groups within organization, the question was, every part, the individual have their own values, and groups has their own values, and also organization have their own values, and also if you look at the government have their own values. Which values are we using to assess our the shared values of information security or information security culture? So by looking at the scope. So the scope means that if we want to understand information security culture, if this view covers the area of interest and do not overlook essential phenomena and issue, we'd see that the shared value, if we have to look at it in an angle, okay, you are looking at it in the angle of organizational culture by itself, then it could have a wider scope.
Zainab, we have 2 or 3 minutes time.
Okay. So let me go quickly. So the simplicity, we saw that the mental model view, it's because it's abstract and it depends with the person, it's not simple. The action-based view, it can bring simplicity because we're only looking at the behavior and action of individual, and it's easy to be defined. But the problem-solving view, although it's simple because it covers the shared value view and action-based view, it becomes complex. So it's easy to understand, but it's complex. So for clarity, we see that the mental model view and shared value view lacks clarity, while the action-based view definitions and the problem-solving view have clarity, because the problem-solving view covers the holistic view of the organization, because we look at the values and we look at the action-based, and then we look at the action that individual need to do to solve a certain problem in the organization. And then, so the most, out of this definition in our critical engagement that we saw that has value when we have to look at information security culture was the problem solving view, although it's had some kind of complexity in the definition. But all the all the views of information security culture show to have fruitfulness in producing good research if one wishes to do so.
Okay.
To conclude, to conclude quickly, so the problem-solving view can produce research in a holistic organizational information security culture, but the mental model view, this would look at psychological and social aspect of information security culture, while the shared value view, one can look at determining or determination of core information security value that are needed. So the future research, we can look at analyzing the definition of information security culture using alternative criteria such as ontological and epistemological assumptions, and looking at what are the common core information security values that can be used in assessing information security and information security culture, either of individual, organization, or groups. Thank you.